All right, good morning, you guys. My name is Robin, this is Sarah. We're here with Santa Ana College to bring you yet another installment of Pain and Torture, AKA the Wellness Program. Today we're going to be talking about deadlifting for a healthy back. It's a movement that you guys do multiple times on a daily basis, but can often be one of the main ways that you guys get injured on the job. So I don't know how many of you guys have heard of someone who just reached down to pick up a pencil or a quarter, right? It's not always about the weight of the item that we're lifting from the floor or from the ground. A lot of times it has to do with our mechanics. So what we're going to focus on is deadlifting and deadlifting properly, and how some of those things can translate into job performance and your workout as well. So what is deadlifting? Any guesses? No guesses. So basically lifting an object from the ground to the hip height position. So that'd be a traditional deadlift or a powerlifting deadlift definition. So in the job, sometimes you will deadlift from the ground, but then you have to lift up to a higher elevation. But for all intents and purposes, we're just lifting something from the ground. Generally, usually people or equipment. Why would we want to lift something from the ground as opposed to if it would be at a higher level? Do you think heavy or lighter things are usually on the floor, or are they usually elevated? Heavy things are usually on the floor, right? We're usually not going to put heavy things at an elevated position because those are harder to manage or control. So deadlifting from the floor, most of the time we're dealing with heavier objects. Sometimes we're not, and sometimes we underestimate lighter objects in terms of our mechanics. So Sarah's going to be my demo person for today. So with job specificity, the biggest thing that we want to think about is most weight you guys move is either dead weight or combative weight, right? So if you have a patient who is not actually unconscious, generally you're not only lifting their weight, but fighting with them, fighting with you. I don't need these leads, I don't need these restraints, right? All kinds of interesting people and situations you guys go into. Dead weight would be, it's not assisting you, right? So someone unconscious would be considered dead weight. They're not assisting you in their ambulation or ambulatory ability to the RA. So we're gonna start with a traditional deadlift. So some things we need to think about is our training area, right? We always wanna have a safe training area. For the most part, when we're using a barbell, a training area would be a platform or a flat surface, generally about 6 by 6 or 8 by 8 would be a good frame of reference, not only just for you to be able to lift your equipment, but also to be clear of anybody else you might accidentally drop it on. So traditionally, we're gonna start with our stance and our grip. So Sarah's gonna step up to the barbell. This would be our traditional barbell deadlift. Her feet are going to be hip width apart so that she has a good solid base of support. That's generally where we're going to derive the most amount of our power. She's going to start with a double overhand grip. So her grip is even on the bar. She's going to have her butt down, her chest up. She's going to take a deep breath, and then she's going to go ahead and lift that bar by pushing her knees back up to the hip, and she's going to reverse. So she's going to push those hips back and lower the bar. Now we notice that Sarah is lifting both her hips and her shoulders at the same time. What she's not doing is butt then shoulders, shoulders then hips. Okay, so show me an improper one. So she's going to drive her hips first and then follow with the shoulders, lower the shoulders first, and then lower the hips. So we don't want that segmented lifting. We want shoulders and hips always to raise together. So let's go ahead and do one more. Butt down, chest up, big breath, shoulders and hips move at the same time, and descend at the same time. Perfect. So traditional deadlift, we're going to use a bar. We're going to talk a little bit about grip and stance. So one of the other variations that we can do to change the strength or stability around the hip is going to be sumo. So she's going to widen her stance, she's going to flare those toes out. Wherever your toes point is where those knees are going to track. So she's going to drive those knees out over the toes. She's going to do a center or narrow grip in the middle. Deep butt down, chest up, deep breath, and shoulders and hips raised together and lower together. Good. We'll do one more. Butt down, chest up, big breath. Lift, and descend. Good. So you notice that her setup is the same every time, so you want to have a consistent setup, right? That's going to be different for everybody. So you're going to find what works for you. If it's okay, set my feet, find my grip, find my focal point, butt down, chest up, or you may do it in some other order. That's okay. So, but the most important thing is having a system in which you approach any type of weight, whether it be a gurney, a patient, a backboard, a barbell, right? How many of you guys, especially if it's like a 500-pound patient or 400-pound patient, right? It's like you've got 4 corners. We're going to coordinate effort. Okay, you're ready, I'm ready, right? This heavy patient is potential for any of us to go out on a back injury, right? So coordinated effort, everybody's ready. We're going to pull up our turnout pants, right? You guys kind of have a system pertaining to in the field, right? Same thing is going to be here. Now, if it's a 90-pound patient, oftentimes we can be like, we just need 2, it's fine, and I'm already turning before I've finished lifting that patient. Generally, that's where those injuries occur. So it's really about having a system and an approach and doing it the same time every way, whether it's 35 pounds, whether it's 500 pounds. Okay? So the next we're going to do is going to go through, we'll hit single leg in a second, but we're going to change some of our grips. So there's some variation on grip and how you can hold the bar. So Sayer's going to do a traditional deadlift, and now she's going to alternate her grip. So she has one hand under, one hand over, butt down, chest up, big breath, shoulders and hips move together, and back down. So any guesses on the benefit of alternating that grip? Grip strength. So we can move more weight with a supine grip as opposed to a prone grip. Unfortunately, you're never going to be taught to do double underhand deadlift. Why? Any guesses? So from a training and or from a training standpoint, as physiologists or as coaches, you won't be ever taught to do that because most likely you're going to want to curl as opposed to use the legs, right? We're going to try and use the arms more than the legs. We're going to get back to that in a second as to why in the field, anytime you guys ever lift like this? When? Gurney, right? So it depends on your department and all that kind of stuff. Some gurneys have the handles at the end, but if your gurneys are here, you're constantly lifting, or backboards, constantly lifting with a double overturned or underturned grip. So with the barbell, I wouldn't necessarily encourage you to do double under, but if we're alternating, we can do a set this way, then we can do a set this way. That way we're still training that reverse grip. Does that make sense? All right, so the next one we're gonna do for grip is gonna be our neutral grip. So that would be, we're gonna grab some kettlebells. Obviously you can't do a neutral grip with this guy, but with our kettlebells, these are offset, and we'll get to that in a second. So she's gonna stabilize, butt down, chest up, big breath. Neutral grip is gonna be hands straight forward and back. Does this look like anything you might do about 20 times a day? Airway bag and medic box, right? So if I only train with a barbell, but what I mostly lift during my shift is a medic box and an airway bag, then I'm not training functionality. I'm training for heaviest weight possible, but I'm not training for the repetition of what I do deadlift every day. So we'll go ahead and move those back. I'll grab this one. So if we wanted to look at a different style of barbell that we can do neutral grip, that would be our hex bar grip. Okay, so I'm gonna have Sayer step into this one. Movement's gonna be the same, butt down, chest up, big breath, and she's gonna stand and then load. So now we can go heavier weight, just like we would with a barbell, but with that neutral grip more in line with what we do daily with the medic box and airway bag. We're gonna get into some injury contraindications, indications for deadlifting a little bit later, and this is gonna be one of our key pieces for that. So I'm gonna have you guys come on up. You guys are gonna practice your traditional stance, double overhand grip, deadlift. So one thing right before you lift, one of the things that go ahead and set up again. You always want to make sure is you get that bar as close to you as possible. So I'm going to have you roll that all the way to those shins. Good. Now what I want you to think about is pulling those shoulder blades back. So you feel how much you set into that bar by doing that. So we want to drive those shoulder blades back. We're going to flatten that back out, big breath. And now go ahead and pick that bar up. Good. And then shoulders and hips lower together. Give me 2 more. Good. And then 1 more. So I'm going to make a quick fix with Corey's grip width. Now one of the things I'd say, keep your feet where they are, but I want you to go thumbs distance from where the rough part is from the smooth part. And now before you stand up, I want you to drive your knees out into your arms. So we're basically going to drive them out. Yep. Now big breath and lift. And then down. Feel any different? Feel more comfortable? Good. And up. Good. And then back down. Nice job. All right, who's next? So especially based on your height, your limb length, some of the mechanics are going to be a little bit different. But we always want to make sure that based on your position, go ahead and stand. And down. And up. And down. Good. I would also go a little bit wider with your grip. So feet are good. So one thing that you noticed, did you notice this last rep because it wasn't a rep? How do you put the bar down? Rounded back and no legs, right? So your first rep and your last rep are just as crucial as the 10 that are in the middle, right? Because it's usually the one is where the back goes, right? Or the, oh, I got the hose finally to the destination, right? So it's really critical that anytime we're under a load, whether it be I'm consciously doing reps or I'm not, that we always use the most perfect form possible to prevent those injuries. All right, so let's go try the thumbs width distance as well. All right, good. Up and then down. Nice. Does that feel any more comfortable? Yeah. Okay, so before you go, you did one thing that I really like. So one of the things that I teach specifically with barbell deadlifts is taking tension out of the bar. So go ahead and get your setup again. So pull like you're about to pull off the floor and back down. You didn't really hear it on that one, but basically he set his shoulders and took his breath, and you guys will audibly be able to hear, right? That's setting the bar. Now everything is under tension. That's relaxed. That's under tension. So what tends to happen between reps is we'll see up, down, up, down, up, right? A lot of torque and stress on that back versus staying under tension. The whole time, right? So anytime we lift the bar from the floor, whether it be a deadlift, a clean, snatch, whatever, we always want to try and take tension out of the bar before we move that weight. So you did that really well on that first one. That's what I wanted to try and catch. All right, you're up. Most basic of movements, but a lot of finer points that can really make the biggest difference in terms of keeping us safe. Good. Good. So one thing you want to notice is that if you're raking your knees as you lower and raise the bar, we want to try and really push the knees back. The tendency is if I drive the knees back, the shoulders stall, right? So we want to drive the knees back while raising the hips and the shoulders at the same time, okay? So try driving into those heels a little bit more as that bar comes up. Good. Nice job. All right, so the last thing we're going to talk about in terms of our safety and execution is going to be focal point. So if Sarah, I'm going to have you jump in. So if her focal point is down on the floor, so go ahead and step up. We're more likely going to have that rounded back, right? So if she goes, usually what I recommend is find something eye height across the room that's very specific, especially because this room's really big. So it's like, wow, that's a long ways away. You're going to literally start grocery shopping, or what do I have to pick up for my kids, or what do I like, where do we have to go next? You're going to go through all these thoughts while you're getting ready for your workout, and those are the things that distract us just long enough to get us hurt. So I'm going to have Sarah look at the very top corner of that door across the room on the right side. So we're literally looking at the junction of the molding around the door. She's going to keep her eyes on that. That's going to allow her to keep that chest elevated, up, and then down. Good. So we don't want to like hyperextend the neck. We just want to have a neutral spine from the head to the hips. Go ahead and look at the floor. We can maintain good posture with eyes lower, but we're more likely, as we get fatigued or tired, do a like fatigued one where you dump your chest. So hips went first, and then the chest is going to drop first. So as we get tired, our mechanics start to change. The focal point is a big key that's going to help you at least keep those hips and shoulders raising together. Make sense? All right, so let's roll this one out of the way. We'll try the hex bar. So this one, for those of you who have back injuries, disc problems, but are able to move under a load, this would be a way to do that safely without getting too much weight out in front, right? Or this takes away a lot of the potential for bad mechanics because the weight is centrally loaded in your spine and in your body. So having the grip on either side of the body, we're going to do the same mechanics but down, chest up. Good focal point, breathe, brace, and move. The benefit of having a repetition in a specific training scenario is that I've been lifting for 25 years and I still say breathe, brace, and then I move. So if you have cues that you tell yourself all the time, now if I'm out on a call at 2 a.m., we've got a 300-pound patient, we're on the side of the freeway, I'm gonna get down, breathe, brace, and then move, right? So if you have those steps and you're really diligent specifically about those steps, it's going to become habit. You're going to literally think those items without consciously thinking those items, and you're more likely to keep yourself safe. So I'm going to have you guys go ahead and demo a couple of these. Good. So some other added benefits with this one is we can think about driving those knees out into the hands or towards the outside of the bar. And we have the kind of the freedom to do that without worrying about the bar hitting our knees. Nice job. Next. Good, so you see how you did that like preload? Take the tension out of the bar. Good, breathe, brace, move. And now let's try and load the middle point portion or back portion of your foot. So a little less toes and a little bit more into the middle of your foot. There you go. Good. Another habit I tend to see with barbells or with weights is thumbs on top of the bar. So we want to really get in the habit of wrapping that thumb around the bar. That increases our grip as well, okay? Good. Nice job. Next. There we go. Cool. All right, so we talked about traditional deadlifts. We're going to move into some other variations of our deadlifts. So we'll keep the hex bar here since we have it. We're gonna start with RDLs, so Sayre's gonna jump in. So oftentimes you've heard of RDL or Romanian deadlift, and then you've also heard of a straight leg deadlift. They're actually two different exercises or movements. A lot of times I hear them get used interchangeably. So with the RDL, we're basically doing a negative deadlift. So she's gonna pick the bar up, butt down, chest up, big breath. And from here, now the exercise begins. So she's going to go in reverse or an eccentric load just to the knee or mid shin, and then back up, and then back down again, back up. So this will be more of a straight leg look with the leg, because it's a slight flexion in the knee, and now I'm moving from the hip. This is a hip dominant movement. So the knees stay flexed or soft and fixed, right? But the idea is we're going from the top down and then explosively up, load, 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 and then up, as opposed to now to a straight leg deadlift, same leg position, only this time we're going from the ground to the top, and it's going to be as similar to our deadlift. Now the key with the straight leg deadlift is we still don't want that chest to drop too much in lieu of those hips, right? So we don't want to dump the chest, we want to hinge the hips back. So the hips are still moving even though the knees are staying flexed. Better, yep. All right, so let's try 2 RDLs and then 2 straight leg deadlifts. So especially when we're doing RDLs, the habit a lot of times is for people, I'm not doing the exercise yet, but I'm gonna pick it up like this, and then when I'm done, I'm gonna put it down like that. So make sure that even though we're not technically, we still have to do a deadlift to get it off the ground. Good. And then back up. Good, I'm gonna switch your focal point to something across the room over there. Now go again. Good. So the benefit of having the eyes up too is we can really engage the lat and drive the shoulders back to keep that chest open, as opposed to letting gravity take over and let those shoulders pull through, okay? All right. And then the straight leg deadlift, yep. So still butt down, chest up, and up. Now we're gonna, yep, soft knee all the way to the ground, and then up. So a little bit less knee flexion. So I want you to really kick those hips back. So you should load the heel on the way down, drive into the heels, drive into the heels, and then drive out of the heels, drive out of the heels. There you go. Better, good. So top down, 2 RDLs, thumbs around the bar. There you go. Good. All right. Good, less knees, drive those hips back. It's gonna be more like a kettlebell swing, so you're really hinging at the hip. Give me one more. Good. All right, now we're gonna go from the ground and then 3 straight leg deadlifts. There you go. So what would be a correlation or a benefit of an RDL or a straight leg deadlift in the job or in a situation, could be a situation at home? When would we need to be able to move something heavy but not have the ability to get into a full squat to do so? Anybody have kids? Car seats? Right, so I'm gonna, like, the RDL would be I'm loading my kid into the car seat, right? Or I'm loading concrete bags or gravel bags into the trunk of my car, or getting them out, right? So the RDL would be loading them in, the straight leg deadlift would be getting them out. So that would be, like, obviously both a slightly elevated position. Gurney, if you're transferring patients, right? RDL is I'm helping provide stability of the patient going away from me. Straight leg deadlift would be I'm pulling the patient towards me, right? So benefit of both. The other one that I like to utilize or think about is like the patient in the bathtub, right? You can't get into a squat because you're going to drill your knees on the bathtub, so you've got to be able to reach down and help pull that patient out. So do those make sense? So it's great if we can get into good squatting position because we're always going to be able to move more weight that way, but you're not always afforded that ability on any given call. So, all right, so now we're going to go to single leg. So I'm going to change it up. Now most stations, most places don't have like the short curl bar. So we're just going to demo with a dumbbell. So with single leg deadlifts, what I like to do is put both hands on either side of the dumbbell. That way we're keeping that chest nice and square. So you can pick up that dumbbell. Now she's going to set one foot. Generally, I'm not telling you to do this, but generally I usually start with my weaker or less stable leg because I want to have the most energy and focus in order to focus on the one that is usually struggle busting. Anytime we work single arm or single leg, we always want to train to the weaker side. So if she can do 50 on her right leg, but only like really effectively do 45 on the left leg, you want to do 45 on both. We'd rather you be weaker on that strong leg and be even than be 50 and 40, and then now they both get stronger and we're 60 and 50, right? There's always going to be that gap. So being unbalanced in strength or mobility is always a bigger risk for injury than it is being weaker or stronger, if that makes sense. Okay? So in this position, she's going to drive her heel back. Yeah, so we'll do just the support step, yeah. So this is going to be the most basic version first. Okay, so she's just using the back leg as like a kickstand, and she's going to squat down and stand up. So she's focusing most of her effort on that standing leg. Now, as you get more stable and more comfortable and have a strong enough core, she's going to then kick her leg straight back. The heel drives up, drives the chest down. Okay? So the goal isn't, hey, I can just get the dumbbell to the floor. So do the dumbbell, but break at the hip to where your chest drops and your leg doesn't go up. So this is what I call the broken arrow. Okay? We want to try and maintain this extension while doing that movement. So if that means she only goes to the knee, that's fine. A shorter range of motion with better position is fine. It's not, the goal isn't to get to the floor. Okay? So switch feet. Good. And then up. And then up. Good. And then reach. So this would be considered a single leg deadlift. Now there's a slightly different variation. Go ahead and put the dumbbell behind the neck. This is a good morning. So anytime the weight is on your body or up on your torso and you're moving, this is now a good morning. So a deadlift is the same motion as a good morning. It's just where is the weight, right? Is it below me or above me? So this would be the same as a single leg deadlift, only now it's a single leg good morning because the weight is at the shoulders. Sometimes this is a little bit more, this would definitely be a bigger load on the back. Counterweighting with the opposite leg should help a little bit. So bring the leg back. Yep. So heel up, chest down. Notice that her standing leg is soft. Okay, so it's not a locked out leg because then I don't have balance. I want a soft leg, then I move at the hip. Okay? Good. All right, so we're going to try some single leg deadlifts. So we'll do, what's that?
I have a question.
Uh-huh.
Holding a dumbbell versus holding it in one hand.
In one hand? So that's a good question. So you want to jump up? So ideally, whichever leg is moving should be, if you want to do single leg or single arm, is going to be the hand that holds the kettlebell or dumbbell. Number one, ergonomics, but number two, when that leg goes back, so do one more, the goal is to keep the hips square and the shoulders square. So what often happens, I can balance, but I'll start to see this. So if I'm loaded with my hand on this side, I'm more likely to roll those hips, and then I'm not engaging the hamstring, I'm actually using the glute and the hip. If I close down those hips and my heel is driving towards the ceiling, the best way to tell is where's your toe pointed. If my toe's out, my hips are open, which means I'm not using the hamstring. If I close my hip, toe is down, then you're gonna feel it up into that high glute or high hamstring, low glute area.
So using the two hands prevents that?
Two hands gives people more balance and control, and they can keep themselves more square. As you progress, you should be able to do the single arm, which then you can work on grip strength and some other things as well. So that's a good point. Only if you want to focus on which way you want to do the grip. I mean, generally, I recommend these are going to be more comfortable with using a kettlebell as opposed to a dumbbell, which would then be overhand. But if you want to change that grip and work on, your neutral grip, then you could use a dumbbell and do it that way as well. All right, who's up first? I like it, I like it. All right, so focal point up. All right, so just step back. Now we're just gonna slide that dumbbell down the shin. Good. Nice work, switch feet. So what would be some examples or reasons why you would want to work single leg at a time? Definitely stability, but some don't have space, right? So I'm going to use my bathroom example, right? Most people vago out in the bathroom. Very rarely are they in the bathtub. Most of the time they're where? On the toilet. So then they vago out and they pass out between the toilet and the bathtub. So now you're like, we've got 3 guys all in here trying to get this person out. So I got my leg wedged between the sink and the toilet, and now I'm trying to reach to get a C-collar on, or I'm trying to get the mega mover behind them or whatever. So there's a lot of reasons why we've got to get all I get is one leg in here and I'm reaching and moving. So working on single leg activities like this is beneficial. Same thing like getting in and out of the rig, right? So if I only do strength training with 2 legs, but I'm literally stepping in and out of the rig with 1 leg 40 times a day, right? Then we want to try and mimic some of our training towards what you guys do on the job. All right, ready to try these guys? Sure. He's like, oh no. So balance is really big key with this one too. And that's I'm a big 2-for-1, right? If I can do an exercise, so don't worry about going so low, just go to the top of the knee. Where standing leg is going to be soft, driving leg is going to be straight. So think about driving this heel to the floor. So you're straightening that leg out as hard as you can, softening the standing leg, and then driving that heel up. Better. Good. All right, switch. There you go. Does one feel easier than the other?
Oh, yeah. That looks a lot better.
All right, who's next? So a good way to practice that, that hinging position is I can take my band, go across my body and over the shoulder, and I can now, right, I'm pushing into the band. That's the same thing you want on that back leg. So I'm going to drive that heel up like so. So it's a good way to practice. You can even put the band on and then hold the weight. Kind of gives you that extra cue of how to get in that position. All right. Bad, good. Good fix on your focal point, Ashab. So one of the detriments with having a lower focal point is actually not opening the hips up all the way at the top of that deadlift. So if my eyes are down, I'm going to start in this flexed or hinged position already. If my eyes are up, I'm going to have basically a complete deadlift is shoulders on top of those hips, right? I'm in a straight line. So sink a little bit more into that stance, that way you're not reaching. So the straighter my legs are, the more lever or load I'm getting in the back. If I can soften the knees and then go into that straight leg deadlift, I'm gonna be able to basically keep that weight closer to the center of my mass and load the low back a little bit less. Good, all right. Now the true test. So some things to think about when you guys ever do any single leg stuff. I think about spreading my toes as wide as I can in my shoe, right? That gives me a better base of support and I'm equally weighted on my whole foot. Focus on the other kind of term instead of breathe, brace, move. When I have balance issues, I think about butts, guts, and move, or butts, guts, and breathe, right? So I'm gonna squeeze my butt, I'm gonna squeeze my guts, and then I'm gonna move. And it's a more purposeful movement because when we're challenging our balance, there's things that are gonna throw us off a whole lot faster. So wide toes, butts and guts. There you go. Try and lock that moving leg out. Straight leg, straight leg. There you go, now drive it. Good. A little bit softer standing leg. There you go. The other nice part about single leg work is you don't have to move as much weight for it to be just as effective. So for me, I have had back issues, right? Putting 300 pounds on my spine is a lot compressive load. So it's like risk versus gain. Can I do a 300-pound squat? Yeah. Can I get just as strong and be more effective and cover other bases like single leg strength, balance, coordination by using a lighter weight and moving, right? So maybe on duty, and we're gonna get into programming a little bit, but maybe on duty I do more of my single leg work, stuff that's not as heavy, but is gonna give me the same strength gains. And then maybe off duty is where I'm really hitting my heavy lifts so that I'm not putting myself at an extremely fatigued rate or position and then going on calls later. So does that make sense? So some of it's based on what we use is, are you working on duty? Are you working off duty? Do you have injuries? Do you not, right? Or what is your outcome or what's your goal? So, awesome. How'd those feel? Hard. All right, we're all good? All right, so we got the single leg down. Now we're gonna go into some of our more job specific. So I'm gonna add in kettlebells and sandbags. So we'll start with, we'll do one kettlebell and one dumbbell. So again, kettlebells specifically, it's nice if they're the same weight and everything matches. But the good news is if you're at a station where you only have one kettlebell of each weight, you can now work on asymmetrically loading your body, right? The airway bag and the medic box don't weigh the same. They're not the same shape. If you have irons and a hose bundle, they don't weigh the same. They're not the same shape. You're not holding them in the same locations. So these are ways that we can work on lifting in positions that you're gonna be in on the job. So she's gonna do a kettlebell and a dumbbell. Obviously one handle's lower. She's gonna work the best she can to straighten or keep herself square. She's not letting the kettlebell win or the dumbbell win, right? So we're not walking around like so. I think one of those things that you guys tend to, or at least I tend to see in the fire service is usually it's like, hey, if I'm gonna carry one, let me carry both so at least I can carry two things rather than you carry the box, I'll carry the bag, and we both are getting messed up. Right? So I think that's one thing ergonomically I've seen a lot more, which is pretty common. But training in the weight room like you would out on the fire ground is just as important. So something else we can do, so I'm gonna have you take the kettlebell and the sandbag. So she's gonna take the sandbag first. She's gonna load it on her shoulder. And now she's going to do her deadlifts with her kettlebell. So now we have irons and hose or saw and hose. So she can do 5 this way, switch shoulders, switch sides. We can also talk about adding in like farmer carries, right? So most of the time you're not going to squat a hose bundle and irons 10 times. Most of the time you're going to pick it once and then walk 500 feet. So then you can add in farmer carries similarly with that, right? So I can do pinch with a plate and a kettlebell. I can do something on my shoulder, something at my hip. I can offset, go something overhead, something on my hip. So there's a lot of different variations that we can do with that. So I'll go ahead and give you guys a chance to, we'll try the dumbbell and the kettlebell, and then we'll add in the sandbag. Nice work. Good. So you got nice long legs. I would encourage you to go a little bit wider with those feet. There you go. And then drive your knees out as you go up and down. So the benefit of driving those knees out, if you guys look, if I'm standing, I can pivot my knees out, so I'm on the outside of my foot. I can pivot my knees in, so I'm on the inside of my foot. So really being able to screw your feet into the ground will then also cue a lot of your inner hip stability muscles as well as like your glute medius to help stabilize the hip as we're moving a load. So if we're underactive in our glutes or underactive in our hip stabilizers, moving a load through a range of motion that's deadlifting isn't usually the back, as a lot of times it's the hip not being stable, so then the back has to compensate in order to stabilize, right? So we want to use those internal stabilizers. That's why we encourage turning those feet out and driving the knees out. That way we can use all the muscles around the hip as opposed to just the back and the glute, okay? All right, let's go sandbag. Good. And with this asymmetric load, you'll feel your hips want to shift, either rotate because the loads are different, or you'll feel the shift to one side or the other more so. So those are good things to pay attention to or to know about. There's a lot of different things that you can do to kind of identify which side you know you always shift to. Some people already know that, some people don't. So there's some banded exercises we can do, but that's a different day. All right, who's up next? There you go. So one thing that I noticed both of you guys did, which was good, is you brought whatever was lower up to the height of the other one, and then you guys made that move. So that's perfect. Trying to move both at the same time, a lot of times we're going to set ourselves up for that. Oh, here you go. Good. Now obviously this sandbag's nice and light, usually a little bit lighter than a hose bundle. The green one we have is 50, and then the red one we have is 100. So we're going to get into a few different things that we can do with that. Up next. Good. Any questions so far? Nice work. Good. Did you guys feel that hip shift at all? Did you feel one side wanting to do something different based on having the load in different locations? A little bit? Okay. All right, so now we're going to move into a couple different variations specifically just with the sandbags. So we'll start with the lighter one, and then if you guys want to add in the heavier ones, we can. So all of the same variations that we've done with the barbell, we can do with the sandbag. The benefit is, number one, this would be more of our combative weight or dynamic weight. Sand shifts when you lift it, so now I have to adjust and move with it. So in programming, I like to recommend doing a day where it's all single leg, single arm, or dynamic load, just for like a different variation. So if I had literally a program with deadlifts, squats, farmer carries, curls, cleans, right? If I had a said program A, I could take that whole program and do it with a barbell. I could take that whole program, do it with a dumbbell, take that whole program, do that single arm, single leg, and I could take that whole program and do it with a sandbag. So now I have one program that I can deviate 4 different ways to get 4 different adaptations, if that makes sense. All right, so from here, Sarah's gonna show you all the fun handles on these. Not all sandbags are the same, so some sandbags have less handles, some have more. Fortunately, these ones particularly have all the handles. So the handles that are showing right now are gonna be your neutral grip. So again, gonna be nice and close. We wanna bring it close to our body, stand up and put it down. Nice and easy, right? She can grab the end caps, which forces her to get lower to the floor. So this would be like if you had a barbell and you elevated your feet. So that would be at a deficit, so to speak. Especially if it's a bigger bag where there's more slack, I recommend grabbing the ends just so you have a bigger range of motion to deadlift. She can now roll it over, and these are gonna be your barbell grips, so you're gonna go double overhand, or you can go alternating, right? So now we're back to discussing grips. So one sandbag can give you a lot of different options or variations. And then the next one is spinning it to where it's perpendicular. Now she can grab the side handles and stand up with it. Or like a hose bundle, she can do a pinch grab and stand up with it. So grab all just in the center of the bag. Yep. So no handles, and now I'm working grip strength, right? Super easy with a 20-pound bag. 50 or 100, a little bit different story. That same pinch grab position, we could then go from a stand into a over the shoulder, just like we would with a bundle, do farmer walks, all that kind of thing. But that's kind of the initial, just moving it, getting it from the floor, practicing standing up. So let's go ahead and try all the different handles. Give me 2 of each. And if you guys want to try the 50, you can. You can try the 20, whichever one you prefer. So we'll go 2 neutral. Good, 2 end cap. Good, I'll give you this guy for the barbell one. Okay. So again, just like that, he's being a good demo for me. Pulling it this way versus either walking to the item or keeping that nice flat back. Good. And then we'll go ahead and go central. There you go. So use handles and then just a grip pull. You gotta flip it, zipper up. There you go. Really, this would be the most awkward. I mostly do it this way if I'm going sandbag over my shoulder. Good. If you want, yeah, go ahead and try. So basically like throwing a bundle. Technically, we guess this would be like a shoulder thruster, I don't know. Or a clean, sandbag clean from the ground, grip, you know, there's a lot of different variations. But all of this comes to the first movement is the deadlift and doing it correctly. All right, who's next? Good, and end caps. So the cool part about this is there is an exercise that's kind of like a reverse squat where you put the dip band, like if you were gonna add weights to do pull-ups, the band that goes around your hips with the chain, you can put a kettlebell and then use elevated surface. So I use like sprinkler boxes. So now the weight's in my hips as opposed to on my back, and I can do weighted squats that way. So this would be a similar variation. So it just changes which muscles you use. So let's go ahead and do a grip pinch. Good. And then give me one over the shoulder. Nice. Good. And then barbell. So you guys can see with the slack in the bag, you get a shorter, limited range of motion. Mm-hmm. Yeah, so if I'm going to go to deadlifts with these, I usually try and use, if I want to get a bigger range of motion, I usually use these because then I have further to travel. All right, next. We'll go with these guys first. Oh, he's going for the big dog. Mm-hmm. So with sandbags, obviously, the less full the bag is, the more dynamic the weight's going to be. The more full it is, A, heavier, but B, also more rigid. Good. And then give me a pinch grip. Now go over the shoulder. There you go. Yep. Nice. And then barbell. Yep. So and then with these, you can add in cleans and snatches and all kinds of other stuff too. But for the purpose of deadlifting, one sandbag can cover a lot of different options. So the last one that I want to demo that would be more fire specific is going to be basically the bear hug deadlift or the bear hug squat. Very beneficial for anybody learning to do dummy drags or firefighter drags and carries. So I'm going to lift the sandbag up here, get my arms underneath, and now I'm going to stand and then squat. So then it becomes less about having my back over and my butt in the air, but getting those hips low and then standing. Anybody want to give that one a go? Nice. All right. So try and get that weight close to you before you roll up. There you go. Butt down, chest up. There you go. Good. Nice. Now the whole point of these is they're not very ergonomically, or they are ergonomically friendly, but they're not, they make everything awkward. And most of the things you guys see in the field are awkward. Like most things don't have handles. Most things move or shift or wiggle around. And so being able to train like you would be the types of things you would see out in the field is gonna help prevent injuries, right? If I have the same approach, breathe, brace, move, butts, guts, move, right? Whatever those three things are, whether I'm dealing with a sandbag, a dumbbell, or a 300-pound patient, if my system is the same, which is what you train in the weight room, then it's going to be the same out there at 2 a.m. and I'm going to be able to keep myself in a safer position. So now we're going to go over some of the regressions, right? So some of the things, right, not everybody, especially if you have any back injuries, you have disc issues, strains, injuries, any of that kind of stuff, there's some variations of these movements that we want to focus on. Obviously, the idea is posterior chain strengthening. So most of the issues in low back pain and shoulder pain are going to stem from tight hips and tight chest. So we're usually too tight in the front and too weak or underactive in the back, right? If my back is used to doing all the work, I'm going to not use my glutes and my hamstrings. So these exercises are designed to help us engage or get those glutes and hamstrings to fire. These are the largest muscles in our body, and they're designed for hip extension. Most of us, unfortunately, because we have tight hips, tend to just use the back to do that. So I'm going to have Sarah set up on the mat, and she's going to now do some of our baseline fundamental hip activation exercises. So if you're one who is going through a back injury, you know you have disc issues, these are preliminary exercises that we can do to get us strong enough in order to then start moving weight, or use these as activation or accessory exercises to help you learn to activate and stabilize. That way when you're moving weight out on the field, then you can be safe. So basic hip bridge is going to be 1. So feet are going to be about a foot from her hips. She's going to engage her glutes, so butts, guts, and breathe, or butts, guts, and move. So she's going to squeeze and lift, driving her hips as high as she can. Now, one thing that's going to change the activation or where it activates is if she brings her toes up. So from here, you're going to get a lot more hamstring. She's going to lift and hold. As she goes down, she's staying tight. So a lot of people will drive up and then flop down, drive up and flop down. So that's not really teaching you to stay engaged. So she's going to squeeze, lift, and then like a 3-second countdown, 3, 2, 1. She's going to basically just kiss the floor and then go back up. So there's no rest on the bottom for that set of 10. Good. So that's going to be one variation. If we want to do we can elevate the feet. We can use a stability ball to make it more unstable. So there's a lot of different ways we can do hip bridges that should engage or activate the glutes and the hamstrings. If you're feeling it in your back, then we've got to regress the movement until we can get those glutes and those hamstrings to fire. So some standing variations to the deadlifts that we just did. Got this. We're going to start with that good morning that we did with the weight in the back. So basically it's a banded good morning. Stance is going to be the same. This is going to be more similar to that straight leg deadlift. And now she's pushing her hips back, keeping her chest up. So this would be a good warm-up for those of you guys who are going to go to a heavier load. And then those that need this as their way of doing a deadlift, this would be a good variation for that. So basically, if you're getting pain in any of the movements, you want to regress the movement until you're no longer getting pain and you're getting the hamstrings and the glutes to fire as opposed to the back. Another variation would be standing on the band, and now we can do a banded deadlift from this position. Based on the band and the thickness of the band, that would get more and more difficult. So any questions on any of the movements? Any questions on any of the regressions, progressions? Right? The big key is no pain. Start at a fundamental level, increase your difficulty. If you haven't been weightlifting at all, I wouldn't recommend going straight to the dummy bear hugs deadlift. Right? Start with stable, start with 2 feet, start with lightweight, and then work your way up from there. The last aspect we want to discuss today is programming. So the main things that you want to think about in terms of how or why you put certain things into your program specifically, which is part of what we're here for, is for you guys can contact Santa Ana and have someone like Sarah or myself come out and work with you individually on some of these items. But skill. So we want to start with what's your level that you're starting at. Do you have an injury you're working through? Is it a movement that you've never done before, right? So the skill level in which you're starting or what you're doing should come into play as to what aspect of deadlifting you're going to use, right? Outcome. What is your outcome? Are you training for powerlifting competition, or are you training for life and function and not, longevity through the job? So just like I talked about before, trying to utilize heavier weights like 1 day a week and then sticking to dynamic weights and single leg moderate weights is going to be more in line with what you guys do on a day-to-day basis. And then number of training days. How many days are you training? Are you only doing weight training 1 day a week and then cardio 2? Or are you trying to do like circuit-based stuff 2 days a week and then a heavy day, a third day, right? So how many days are you doing weightlifting will impact which exercises you choose. And then really is it off duty or on duty, right? So if I'm going max out on duty, the chances of injury because of fatigue and those kinds of things, especially if I'm on a 48, 72, or 96, right? Being on a 48, 72, or 96 is not the day to go heavy 1 rep max deadlift, right? Day off after a day of rest would be more ideal for that. On duty days would be more, lighter loads, more repetitions, stuff that focuses on dynamic loads or single leg, single arm would be more apropos, right? I'm still getting my workout in. I can still move a heavy amount of weight if I'm doing single leg, but I'm not overloading my system or my body to where I'm going to be a detriment to my crew or myself. So skill, outcome, number of days of training, what's your goal, all lead into why you pick certain exercises and why you put them into your workout. Do you guys have any questions with that? So for better or more help on programming, or if you would like someone to come out to the station and help you guys out, please contact Santa Ana College, and we can kind of set you guys up with a program based on what your station has. But hopefully we'll be able to cover a wide, or we are able to cover a wide basis of different styles and reasons for deadlifting for today's purpose. So any questions? Should we go through the quiz? Okay. All right, well, I appreciate your time, you guys. Sarah, thank you so much for your assistance, and we'll see you next time.